So once you get past Devan Deal, where's the pass rush for the TCU Horned Frogs coming from next season? We'll discuss that and some more fall camp battles coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. We're brought to you today by Gametime. I'll tell you later on in the show how you can get tickets through Gametime. Some of you guys, you disagree with me about Memphis going to the Big 12. That's fine. We'll discuss it later on in the show. TCU football, they have a new color analyst, a former offensive coordinator, Justin Fuente, who's been at Memphis as a head coach, also spent some time as Virginia Tech as the head coach there. We'll discuss that later on in the show, but we start today with something that I talked about in segment 2 on Tuesday, and I've discussed it multiple times this offseason. One of the intriguing things about the lead up to this season for the TCU Horned Frogs when it comes to football is that a lot of these position battles and roster spots feel like they're figured out. I mean, there's not a ton of competition at different places, and we all hear coaches say all the time, competition's a good thing. I say that for the starters. I feel like TCU has a good idea of who most of their starters are going to be. When I was at Big 12 Media Days, I heard Mike Gundy say that typically he went on vacation after Media Days wrapped up. He planned on doing that again this year. He and his staff, they took some time off before reconvening and getting ready for the season. Going into that vacation, post Media Days, after spring practice wrapped up, he felt like out of the 22 starting spots, they had 8 of them figured out, meaning 14 position battles were going to take place during training camp practice before the season opener. That's not the world that TCU is living in. I think right guard is a place where we're going to figure out who the starter is going to be, whether that's Remington Strickland or Carson Bruno, both players that transferred in this past offseason. Bruno from Louisiana Tech, Strickland from Texas A&M. I believe corner is a place where Avery Helm's going to be a starter. If I had to guess today, I would say Channing Canada will be the other starter. But I think Javon McIvor, I believe Vernon Glover, Elijah Jackson potentially could all have a say in that. They'll all get their opportunities to vie for that other starting job. At wide receiver in the slot, between young guys like Ed Small and some veterans who haven't played a lot to this point because of injury, but Jordan Bailey, Major Everhart, players that were recruited to eventually step into that role and have done some good things throughout their career thus far. But I want to start today with, I don't even know if you want to call it a position battle. I guess it's just kind of guys jockeying for where they're going to be on the depth chart. A place that you might not spend a lot of time thinking about. Stud linebacker, which is a stand-up edge rusher who also is asked to do, things in the coverage game. There's multiple responsibilities there. Devan Deal came over from Tulane last offseason and did a really good job filling that role. Cooper McDonald from San Diego State also was an edge rusher, stud linebacker type of player. Cooper McDonald moves on. Devan Deal led the team in sacks last year with 5.5. I felt like in the last 4 or 5 games of the season, he really came on as a dude you could trust. Honestly, after that Utah game, not that I didn't notice him before, but that was one of those games where I was like, okay, Devan Deal was flying all over the place. And then the last half of the season, he was showing up week after week, getting to the quarterback. TCU had 26 sacks in 2024. One of the reasons why we were excited about Andy Avalos calling plays for the defense is because he has a reputation from his time at Boise State, at Oregon, and elsewhere as a coordinator who is able to get favorable matchups for his pass rushers and set them up to make plays. The year before Andy Avalos took over, Joe Gillespie, that defense really struggled in a lot of facets, but one of them being rushing the passer. And they were not a team that blitzed a lot. I threw the stat out there at some point during that year. They were right behind Northwestern, second to last in the country in blitz rate. that was supposed to increase with Avalos calling plays. When I talked to Colton Deary at Media Days, TCU's new center, he said that A.J. Ricker told those guys, one great thing about having Avalos on the other side is you're not going to see defenses that are more complex than what he's throwing at you on a week-to-week basis. Well, they had 26 sacks in 2024. That's the same amount of sacks they had in 2023. Going back to 2022, they had 30. So it's been a few years now where, I mean, you're averaging basically 2 sacks a game, which doesn't sound that bad, but ideally you want more pressure on the quarterback. So this upcoming season, where is that pressure going to come from once you get past Devan Deal, who led the team in sacks last year? Now, Zach Chapman's a name to know at defensive end. Ansel Dinboo, transfer from Washington State, who got good pressure at Wazoo as an interior pass rusher last season, which is not a place that you typically see guys rack up sack totals. So that was a good sign. He'll bring his ability over to get pressure from the interior. But at stud linebacker, at edge rusher, who can take some of those snaps and some of that responsibility from Devan on a week-to-week basis? Jonathan Bax. It's a name we've heard a lot over the past few years. A guy that looks the part. Like when Andy Avalos took the job, that was a name that popped in your head of, oh, hey, that's somebody I heard, Joe Gillespie talk about. He made some waves in camp. He seems to fit more as an edge rusher type. And in Gillespie's defense, they didn't have a place for him. But with Avalos taking over, it would make sense that suddenly he would be a guy that would get opportunities to play and to make things happen. Last year, 3 tackles, 2 solo tackles, did have a fumble recovery against Oklahoma State, made a few plays here and there, but he's going to need to step up and take a bigger lion's share of responsibility going into this year. You also got some young guys like Chad Woodfork and John Schobel, but I'm always skeptical and wary of putting a bunch of responsibility on true freshmen right away. I think Chad Woodfork's a really good player. I feel like he's going to be an impact player for TCU in the future, but I believe it's going to take some time. And I don't know if expectations for him to be right away a dude that can make things happen is realistic. Maybe he could be in kind of the Marcel Brooks role of the last few seasons. Marcel Brooks, who moved on from his college football career, but was a situational pass rusher. And that's what he did. And he made some plays at times, but he wasn't going to get a lot of snaps. However, in obvious passing situations, if you needed a change of pace, if you needed somebody who had great athleticism to step in and try to make something happen, Marcel Brooks was a good option. Give him the chance to get in there and go make plays. So Woodfork could potentially do something like that. Maybe Schobel could do something like that. Jared Martin is another player to know. However, I think a lot of this falls on Jonathan Bax behind Devan Deal to step up and make plays. So when we talk about fall camp, that's a dude that I'm looking to hear from. That's a position group that I just want to know, okay, who's getting to the quarterback? Who's making tackles for loss behind the line of scrimmage in the run game? Who's popping up day after day, practice after practice as someone you can count on? Because Cooper McDonald, like, he's one of those guys, you're probably not going to think a ton about him when we talk about losses from last year. But he was somebody who could be a starter, he could be a depth piece, and he knew what he was doing. Nana Afasa-Mensah also kind of fits that bill of defensive lineman, transferred in from Notre Dame, wasn't going to get 3 or 4 sacks a game, but he had 3 sacks last season. He did his job respectably most of the time. And so now you have to find somebody to replace those snaps as well. Now, they feel like they have more depth along the defensive line, but it is a number of players that are unproven once you get past these starters. Marcus Deal's done it at this level. Ansel Dinboo's done it at this level. But then Zach Chapman, Devan Deal, once you get behind those guys, it's sort of, well, I mean, we think this guy can do it. If things break the right way, that's going to be a place where we're watching to see who emerges. And then the other spot for me, and again, it's not a starter, but at linebacker, because we know Caleb Alarmzor and Namdeal Bizor are going to be the starters. But then Max Carroll, Michael Thiessen, I guess kind of by default at Missouri State, FCS All-American that they brought in after spring practice. And I say by default just because like we haven't seen him practice yet, but you would think with that experience and that resume, he would get the nod over some of those young guys. But then who else can you count on? I think that's the big question for TCU in fall camp. It's not so much where are your starters, who are they going to be, what are they going to do? It's honestly week to week, like who's somebody who can give you 15 to 20 snaps or less in some situations, but who are those backups? Or maybe it's just like, who can you depend on if you have an injury, which are going to be inevitable, especially when we talk about physical positions on the defense. When we come back, Memphis, do they deserve to be in the Big 12? We'll talk about it next year on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day. Game time. It's the best place to get tickets on the secondary market. Baseball season in full swing. Second half of the year just got underway. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege if you're a first-time customer and get $20 off your first purchase. Gametime's super easy to use. I told you during basketball season, during TCU baseball season, I would use it frequently because it really is just 3 or 4 clicks of button and tickets go straight to your phone. You don't have to wonder where they are, where they're going. There's no hidden fees. I mean, there's some fees, but they tell you what they are up front. They're very honest about it. Gametime. Download it today. It's an app that's super easy to navigate. It's the best place to get tickets. Gametime app, whether it's MLB games, whatever the case is, give the Gametime app a try. Download it today. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. They give you a view of what you're going to see from your seat when you sit down. Gametime, they make it simple for you. So if you missed yesterday's episode, feel free to go back and listen to it. But there was a big story reported on by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, a lot of people at ESPN, the usual suspects when it comes to outlets, and we're talking about college football. Memphis, the university, their athletic programs, they put together a proposal, and they approached the Big 12 about joining the Big 12. Now, realignment is still happening, but in the Power Four, it's slowed down a lot, right? The ACC, we heard those rumors last year around this time. Florida State and Clemson were unhappy. Seems like those waters have been smoothed over, at least for now. Pac-12 is trying to rebuild. They're adding Texas State, other schools. They might end up adding Memphis. We'll see. And since the Pac-12 is adding schools from the group of 5, then within the group of 5, we're seeing a lot of movement as well because there's always that domino effect, right? If you take a school out of one conference, well, then that conference has to backfill with somebody else. And so it's almost like people are constantly getting pulled up. But Memphis was a school that was considered by the Big 12 when they added UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati. But ultimately, the Big 12 leadership decided, you know what, we're good. Memphis came to them with this proposal saying, hey, we got $250 million in corporate sponsorships that we're ready to run with and launch in support of, Big 12 membership. And because of that, you don't have to give us any revenue for the first 5 years. We're willing to defer that revenue sharing agreement and payment for the first 5 years of our time in the Big 12, just so we can be in a power conference and have that automatic qualifier for the college football playoff. Because when we talk about these schools trying to get there, that's really what they're looking for. They're looking for the chance to get an AQ bid to the college football playoff if they can win their conference title. So that's what Memphis was searching for. Reportedly, this does not have the support of the Big 12 presidents. They need 12 of the 16 to agree to it, and they've said no, and they've told Memphis to move on. Now, I think that's a mistake, and it's not because I think Memphis would be a good addition. I don't know if it's a slam dunk, but the reason why I feel like it's a mistake on the Big 12's part, it reminds me a few off seasons ago when the Pac-12 had the opportunity, if they wanted to take over the remnants of the Big 12. They could have picked and choose who they wanted when Texas and Oklahoma left and formed their own super league and essentially put the Big 12 out of business, or maybe, what's happening with the Pac-12 now would happen with the Big 12. Whatever leftovers were there would then reconvene and try to add schools. TCU, according to Mac Engel and an article he wrote back in the day, was close to making that jump. They were one of the schools that was considered by Pac-12 leadership, and they were willing to do that at one time. They eventually decided against it and decided to stay loyal to the Big 12. But the Pac-12 also kind of thumbed their nose at Big 12 schools and said, you know what? We think we're good. We don't want to add anybody. It doesn't really fit our culture here. They don't fit from an academic perspective, whatever the case was. They basically said, hey, we're better than you. You guys will be available whenever, so we'll just wait you out. Well, what happened? USC and UCLA leave for the Big Ten. The Pac-12 disbands. The Big 12 picks up a lot of those schools. And Brett Yormark ends up looking like a genius because he went to the table first when he got the job and came to the TV partners and said, hey, let's hammer out a deal. I just want my people, my constituents, to have a good idea of what they're going to be making when it comes to TV revenue in the future. So let's go ahead and get a deal done. And that way everybody's on the same page about how we're moving forward as a conference. That turned out to be a very shrewd move. Now, a number of you chimed in on the show and said you weren't interested in this. You think I'm wrong, which is fine. Texas Pride on YouTube says, say a big fat no to Memphis, also to Gonzaga and UConn. I would be more in favor of adding SMU and Tulsa. Well, I don't think SMU is feasible. I mean, that would be fun to add more Texas flavor to the league, and it would keep the rivalry, with TCU intact. But SMU is committed to the ACC. I mean, they're locked in. Now, if the ACC ended up crumbling like we thought they might last offseason, then potentially that would be an option, but I don't think that's there now. Tulsa's intriguing because, you got the New Orleans, or not Tulsa. That's Tulane. Tulsa in Oklahoma. I have no interest in Tulsa. I guess I had Tulane on the brain because of Devan Deal. Yeah, I don't agree with you there at all. I have no interest in Tulsa. I mean, yeah, they've had some success, but nothing like Memphis in my mind. And that's not a big market. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get that. I don't get Tulsa at all. Tommy says, I think they were smart by not adding them. In a few years, the American Conference, or the ACC, is going to lose their biggest brands. So the Big 12 will be able to pick and choose from who's left. A lot of conferences will have new TV deals. If there's going to be any movement, I would expect it to happen in 2030 or 2031, possibly be announced in 2028. Well, that's the dream, right? Is that Clemson and Florida State, maybe they jump to the SEC or Big Ten, and then the Big 12 can pick off the remaining ACC schools. Add Duke and Carolina, add Georgia Tech, whoever you're interested in. I just don't think adding Memphis hurts your future in that. I don't really think it affects the ability to add those schools later on. I mean, the only thing I could really think of is, I guess, if you got to 18 and you just thought to yourself, well, we can't go beyond 18, but we're going to get there eventually. I mean, the SEC and Big Ten for now, they're fine. They're content. They've made all their moves. I don't think Greg Sankey is going to stand pat, though, forever. If he has the chance to make an addition somewhere, I believe he probably will. So, I don't know. I feel like you could add Memphis and possibly one more school, and it wouldn't be a detriment to you in more expansion down the line. I guess that's where I'm coming from. A Big 12 administrator was quoted anonymously in the Yahoo Sports story, and he said, well, we vetted Memphis a long time ago when we added these 4 other schools and we decided not to do it. What changed? And my response to that is well, what changed is that at the time you were comparing them to those other schools and you said to yourself, well, we think these other schools are more valuable or a better fit for the Big 12 or whatever conclusion that they came to. The difference now is Memphis is coming to you and they're saying, hey, we got this covered. We'll pay for this. It's a no risk proposition to me. It doesn't affect your bottom line in the immediate. And it just adds another school and their footprint to your conference. But they disagree with me. You guys do too. That's fine. I just don't want the Big 12 to get into a place where they're well, we're good. We'll just wait and wait and wait. Because I think that's what the Pac-12 did. They were like, well, those Big 12 schools will be available at any time. So we can just go grab them whenever we want and it'll be fine. But eventually that didn't happen. And the tables turned on them and they weren't prepared to make that happen. Now, thankfully, I believe Brett Yormark is a pretty forward-thinking guy. And he says, you know what? I'm looking ahead of this. I do wonder. I know Brett was excited about UConn and Gonzaga. The presidents basically told him, no, thank you. I don't know how he thought about what he thought about Memphis. I feel like he could have been in support of it just because of the basketball connection. I know he's a big basketball guy. I do get nervous about, like, does he get discouraged and say, you know what, if these guys aren't going to like take my advice and my ideas, then maybe I should just move on and do something else. I'm not saying that's what he's thinking. It's just speculation on my part, but I do feel like it's something to watch if they continue to kind of thwart his ideas for expansion within the league. When we come back, a new voice in the TCU radio booth. We'll talk about that next year on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. So I am, in my heart of hearts, a radio nerd, but I used to work in the radio industry. And so one thing that I really nerd out about is radio broadcast for different teams. I know not everybody's a Dallas Fort Worth sports fan that listens to the show, but I do think DFW sports fans are uniquely spoiled in that Eric Nadell is outstanding on the Rangers radio network. I also really like Matt Hicks and Jared Sandler. I think they do great work. Brad Sham, Babe Loffenberg, incredible Cowboys radio team. I thought Chuck Cooperstein, I don't even know where the Mavs are now on radio, but I thought Chuck has and will do an outstanding job as the radio voice of the Mavericks through the years. And TCU is really blessed as well. I mean, Brian Estridge is great. And for years, he's had, John Denton as a sideline, or not sideline, but color analyst next to him in the booth, and Landry Burdine last year. But in addition to the radio booth, in Justin Fuente, former TCU co-offensive coordinator and QB coach, of course, was on that staff when the Frogs won the Rose Bowl, went on to be the head coach at Memphis and head coach at Virginia Tech as well. I saw in an article with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram that he said he's just not interested in coaching in this environment. Like, it's not what he signed up for. It's not what he envisioned when he started coaching in the industry with NIL and revenue sharing and everything that's come with that. So he's moving on. He's going to try his hand at the media jobs, and he'll do an outstanding job. I'm really excited to hear him when it comes to play calling, because I think play calling, as fans and as media people, we just look at the results. It's hard to understand, like, okay, what are the in-depth things happening here? Is he calling this particular play or this formation to set something up down the line? What are they seeing on tape? What are they seeing from the defense and how they adjust? And how is that affecting play calls, on a drive-to-drive basis? I feel like Coach is going to give us a great view and perspective on that moving forward. Landry Burdine did an outstanding job. I saw on social media yesterday he announced he'll be just not working with the radio team anymore, and that sounded like his decision. I hope it was. I know his sons, I think, are getting ready to go off to college maybe, so maybe it's just like season of life. Hey, I want to do something different, but I always enjoyed listening to him too. I do think this is a really cool addition, though, to the radio booth, having him there, just his perspective on the game. And I always love listening to Brian. I don't know how you guys take in TCU games. Usually I try to listen to the radio broadcast and watch on TV, so I just sync it up, and I'll do it that way. And sometimes I just turn the television off and I listen, and then I'll go and watch back later. But yeah, I'm really nerdy about radio, and it used to be my full-time job. So I guess that's kind of where it comes from. But I love hearing the presentation of a game, the different segments people do. And yeah, I think this was great news for TCU sports fans, because now everything's on television, but there still is something really charming about listening to your hometown radio broadcast. So I just want to pass that news along to you if you're interested. Justin Fuente taking over as the color analyst for TCU football this upcoming season. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'd love to get to 1,500 subscribers before football season kicks off. We're about 25 away. I think we can do it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available there.